Good afternoon, folks. With you in a second. Right, that's Facebook on board. So, good afternoon, all. As you can see, I'm on my own this afternoon. It was unexpected. I've written the show for two hosts, but I'm afraid David isn't up to it today. He's mentally tired. He was up all night last night, apparently, an uncomfortable night, and then he did his physiotherapy today at Westmark in Glasgow. So he's exhausted, and he's just not mentally with it today. When I spoke to him on the phone, actually, he sounded as if he needed to sleep. He wasn't very coherent. So I'm afraid it's just me this afternoon. And hi, Melanie. And I'll do my best with what I've written, because I say it was written with the idea of David being with me today. And there's obviously pauses within what I've written for him to come back with replies and things like that. But we'll see what we can do. Okay, so we'll start off as we usually do with 5 stories that are based here in Scotland, and then we'll move out to the wider UK and the wider world. Okay, so we'll start off today, and that's with the news that John Swinney is urging Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves to boost a investment, capital investment, infrastructure investment, so on and so forth, in the up and coming budget. Now, he wants a boost to capital investment, as I say. He wants investment in infrastructure. He wants to raise the cap on public sector borrowing. It's currently set at 3%. He hasn't stated how high he would like to lift that cap. And he would also like England to follow suit with Scotland's tax system. Because, as we know, the OBR has stated that if England was to replicate Scotland's tax system and spread the burden a wee bit more fairly across more tax bands, then it would boost the coffers in England by 11 billion quid a year. It's a lot of money that could go to public services in England. An awful lot of money. And anybody who lives in England who's been observing our tax system will understand how it's accepted, how nobody's actually hammered, and how we spread the burden more evenly across the different earning levels. And that just helps us to improve our public services. It boosts the Scottish Government's income for Scotland's income tax system by 1.7 billion for what it was under the old system, the UK system. So that's what John's asking for. Is he going to get it? No. No, he's not. Because all the talk we're getting at the moment and speculation and budget, and we'll get a wee bit more into that as we get further in, is that there will be tax rises, but simultaneously there will be cuts to the public service. So this is austerity being described to you folks. The extra revenue raised will not be pumped or funneled back into public services where it should go. It will be used to cut public sector debt or government debt. But as we know at this point in time, that's not what the UK economy needs. What the UK economy needs is huge investment in the public sector and the public ministries. Because we know what happens when you invest heavily in the public sector. That is, for every pound you spend, it comes back fourfold. And of course, when you're building infrastructure, as we've already explained as well for people, you haven't actually spent any money. When you're building infrastructure, what you're doing is you're exchanging cash for assets. That's all you're doing. The example we often use, or David often uses, is that you win the lottery, your mate says to you, what are you going to spend your money on? And you say, I'm going to buy a big house. And your mate points out to you, but you haven't spent any money. The big house is worth the same as the amount of cash you swapped for it. So your net worth hasn't went down. That's what the UK needs. It's not what it's getting. Okay, well, let's move on. All right, Murray Foote, the architect of the vow, who went on to become the chief executive of the Scottish National Party after Peter Muro had to stand down. Well, he's standing down and all. It was announced earlier this year. In his resignation letter, he said he could not give the time that was required for the party. So, a new interim chief executive has been appointed, and this decision was made at a committee meeting of the National Executive Committee. And the new interim chief executive, thanks very much, Suthers. The new interim chief executive will be ex-Stirling Council chief executive, and that is, I've got a name down here somewhere, Carol. I haven't got it in a better look at it, folks. Can't believe I did that and didn't look at it. Only take me 2 seconds, folks. Anyway, this woman was 6 years as chief executive of the Stirling Council, where she apparently was quite a successful chief executive. And her name is Carol Beattie. Okay. Now, say 6 years there. Now, Murray Foote didn't really have a successful time as chief executive of the SNP. We took a hammer in the last election, but hey ho. Anyway, when Keith Brown introduces Carol Beattie, he introduces her as if it's a permanent appointment, which is probably going to be the case. But the appointment does have to be approved at the next conference. Okay. But Carol Beattie tells us, and I hope she's right, that she's going into the headquarters in Edinburgh to modernise the party. Well, I hope she's going to ask some of us members how we think the party should be modernised, especially the headquarters. Because one of the biggest problems this party's had isn't just the size of branches now and the amount of new members, although that has started dwindling again. It is the actual setup at the headquarters is crap. I mean, we have the best councillors in Scotland right now, and they bang their head off a wall trying to get any information for headquarters, any help for headquarters, especially when it comes to legal issues. So, not just as a branch network need modernised, but also there needs to be a legal department set up to be able to help members of parliament and the councillors to navigate their way through the legislation which is in place. It was Murray Foote, an interim CEO, or was he? Class action. Well, anyway, he's being replaced. But this woman says she's going to modernise the SNP as a party and make it a dynamic election winning machine. Let's hope she's correct. Let's hope she can actually do it. As I say, because anybody who's a member of the SNP trying to get any information for the headquarters, it's like banging your head off a wall. So it does need to be updated. And let's hope this Carol Beattie can fit the bill in. Okay, the next one seems to be upsetting some people, so I'm going to explain to them why they shouldn't be upset with this one. But there's been a freeze on ferry prices here in Scotland this year, but that's not be the case next year. In fact, the freeze has been on for a wee while actually, but that will not be the case next year. As of next year, ferry prices will be going up by 10%. Now, sounds like a big number, but it's not really when we look at how inflation has impacted on the ferry companies, those that do the Northern Isles and those that do the Western Isles, especially on the cost of maintenance. As we all know, during this inflation spike, cost of everything went up. It hasn't come back down. It just hasn't gone up as fast anymore. Doesn't come back down. Never does. But people shouldn't bemoan the price of ferries here in Scotland, because since 2008 we've had something called the road equivalent tariff. And that's where the cost of the ferries is no more than what it would cost you to travel that distance by road, plus a small charge to cover the running of the fleet. So Calmac are not making huge profits, and neither is the Northern Isles ferry operators. They just know. They're making enough to maintain the services. That's it. So the 10% will be set basically on the increased costs of running the ferries, because the road equivalent tariff part of it, that's adjusted annually for things like fuel costs. Because obviously as fuel prices fluctuate, the road costs of transporting goods or transporting people changes. But yeah, ferry prices are going up. An outrage from the opposition parties. The press are trying to create an outrage about it as well. But folks, if you don't use the ferries, then you won't understand about the road equivalent tariff and how it's actually made the life of islanders much more bearable when it comes to the cost of living, because goods are going to be transported to the islands. It has caused them some problems when it comes to tourism, because people can't believe how cheap the network is when they're visiting Scotland to go and visit the islands. So there's increased tourism to these islands. So the economies are getting a bit better, but the infrastructure is not getting any better to accommodate this. So there is a bit of friction there. But the road equivalent tariffs means that Western ferries have been up about 4 times in the last, doubled in the last 4 years. No doubt. When we look at the costs, especially through the pandemic, and then of course hyper it with the mental inflation rate we had. But as I say, the road equivalent tariff means that the ferry prices are still reasonable. And although 10% does sound like a big chunk, that's the increased costs of running the service. We've all suffered for the cost, for the crazy inflation rates we had at 11%. We've seen the cost of living crisis created from it, between that and the energy companies, of course. At one point, food price inflation was at 19.7%, for Christ's sake. That was a combination of the problems of it getting imports in, as well as other issues which drove inflation. But the main thing that drove inflation, as we know, was profiteering. Profiteering, that's the main thing. They blamed it on wage increases, but it was profiteering. All right, let's move on. Primary schools in Perth and Kinross are closed is a direct attack on the Scottish Government. Now, right across the public sector in Scotland, everywhere has accepted the latest pay deals and the latest pay round from the Scottish Government, except for Unison in Perth. Unison and Perth have instructed their supply staff in schools, janitors, dinner staff, auxiliary staff. They've been advised by the union to go on strike. Everybody else has accepted the settlement, but no in Perth. So Unison, as a political attack on the SNP, is disrupting the education of the young people in Perth, but more importantly, they're depriving their members of wages. Because every day they're on strike, they're losing money. It's up to the members to sort this out. This is not how trade unions should behave. Unison's fight isn't directly with the Scottish Government, it's with COSLA, who negotiate with the Scottish Government on behalf of the councils. So if Perth and Kinross Council has a problem when nobody else does, take it up with COSLA. You don't go on a political attack against the government. Trade unions shouldn't be doing that at all, really, unless they're calling a general strike. To go on strike during pay negotiations is legit. It is. Withdrawing your labour is legit. But Unison have picked this particular council area to pick a political fight when Unison members in all the other areas are at work. If their members out right across Scotland and no accepting the deal right across Scotland, that would be better, that would be acceptable. But this particular incident, I wonder who's behind this one. Right, this one's an interesting story. This one is, because there isn't much in Scotland, by the way, folks, I can assure you. Everything is focused on what's going on down that road. Even the rags here are focused on what's going on down that road. Okay, but apparently the plastic bag charge in Scotland is 10 years old today. It was introduced first on these islands in 2011 in Wales. It was then replicated in 2013 in Northern Ireland. Scotland introduced the charge in 2014 and England introduced the charge in 2015, I believe. Anyway, at the time, the charge was set at 5p, and in the first year, supermarkets reported giving out 80% less plastic bags. 80% less. And that was estimated to have took 650 million plastic bags out of circulation. Now, we know in 2021 there was a stooshy about the price of a plastic bag from a supermarket, and minimum price being raised from 5p to 10p. Okay. Now, it's been reported in the latest figures for last year that Keep Scotland Beautiful have reported that in their annual litter picks, since the introduction of this particular charge for plastic bags, when they're out cleaning up, they report 70% less plastic bags among the litter that they're picking up in areas and off our streets and byways. Okay, so apparently the plastic bag thing has worked. But there's another interesting wee thing which is taking an awful lot of rubbish out of the landfill sites here in Scotland, which people don't think about much, but it's all compiled in the figures. And that is minimum unit pricing of alcohol. We're drinking 14% less alcohol here in Scotland. That's 14% less empty plastic bottles, aluminium cans, and glass going to either landfill or recycling. So, it would appear the litter problem was getting better, although I have to say that over the pandemic, we seem to have a lot more litter piling up as people couldn't take it to recycle centres and things like that. There was a lot more fly tipping during the pandemic. 30 pence a bag in Asda. You get a paper one at Morrison's for 25. I think that's the cheapest one they do. Point is, it works. How do you know it worked? How do you know that this particular policy worked? Because when I pop my boot, on the one side there is a bag for life with another 10 or 12 bags for life in it. So this policy has actually changed the behaviour of the people right across these islands. Because I bet you a pound to a penny, I'm not the only person that when they open the boot of their car, there's a bag for life or 2 or 3 sitting there for when you nip into the shops. So this policy, believe it or not, a decade on, has worked. It has actually changed the behaviour of the society, which is brilliant. Now, of course, the deposit return scheme, if it hadn't been vetoed by Alistair Jack and the UK government under the internal market rule, would probably change the behaviour of the consumer again when it comes to things like recycling glass, aluminium tins, and plastic bottles. Eventually, the policy will be introduced when England catches up and we can all actually go ahead with deposit return schemes. Because, as I say, if the charging for plastic bags has changed the behaviour of the people across these islands, then deposit return schemes will as well. So, shows you, sometimes there is good ideas. And on the minimum unit pricing of alcohol, it's not just saving lives, it's keeping crap out the gun. Win-win. Right. Let's move on. Let's move down that road. And I see poor King Chuck isn't getting an easy time here in Oz. He's over there to what they're calling the Commonwealth. Tour of the Commonwealth. But what he's actually doing is visiting his colony. Anyway, it's not going down well. On arrival in Oz, there was a banquet which was supposed to welcome him to Oz, and invitations were sent out to all the regional parliaments for the leaders to attend the banquet. Well, anyway, poor Chuck, all the regional parliaments politely declined the request to join His Majesty and his Queen for a bite to eat. So that was the first slap in the face. He's now been heckled in the main parliament in Cambria, where they were having a ceremony to welcome him to the colony of Australia. Anyway, an Aboriginal senator called Linda Thorpe disrupted the ceremony, shouting, "Not my king," accusing Charles's line of having committed a genocide in the country of Australia against her people. And this went on for about a minute before she was escorted from the Parliament by security. Anyway, as she was being dragged away, she just kept shouting, "Not my king, and this is not your country. This is not your land." Linda Thorpe is an Aboriginal Australian. And she's right. His line did carry out a genocide of her people in her land. But that's what they do. Not their land at all. Prior to that, done it in Wales, done it in Ireland, done it in other colonies. It's how it works. It's how you create an empire. Yeah. So, poor King Chuck. Question is, how long, how much longer will Sausage Fingers and his family have an influence on the continent of Australia? It's not just a country, it's a continent. You know, how long will it be a member of the Commonwealth? For how much longer will be the head of states of places like Canada and Australia? I don't think it'll be much longer. I really don't. So, especially for Australia, the clock's ticking, tick tock. Yeah. The royal family's influence on the planet will be waning as the young people, especially here in the UK of today, don't see them as being of any relevance. None. But if we thought King Chuck was having a bad time in Oz, not patching what Keir Starmer's going through here. Yeah, kudos to the lady that called him King of England. Well, that is where he's king of. Thanks, Al. I'll try to get that one up. Thanks, Al. Hey. So, we thought King Chuck was having a hard time. Keir Starmer's not having a great time over it either, is he? All the right-wing outlets on social media, and of course GB News, are all asking how long he's going to last. Is he going to quit? No, talking about quitting, his chief of staff quit. Sue Gray shuffled off to one side. And there's a lot of infighting in the cabinet. We're 9 days out for his budget. And they're still fighting about the departmental budgets. And apparently, Keir Starmer's deputy leader, who he can't get rid of, is leading the revolt. You know. And then, of course, the public are not very happy with him at all. His first 100 days have been a disaster. And now we're running headlong into a budget which is predicted to be no good to anybody. Because, as I've said earlier, it looks like we're going to get taxed and we're going to get cuts to the public service, which means the increase in funding that we provide the government will not be going to the public services. It will not be getting invested in the public sector. It will be going to cover the national debt. Thanks, Geordie. Thanks very much. Is Carol any relation to you, by the way? The new chief executive of the SNP. But I mean, if you see, you know, the next 10, 12 days could determine both Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer's future. This budget is going to be interesting. So far in the speculation, we've had employers' national insurance to rise, which apparently will hit the employees. We've got speculated raids on pensions. We've got speculation of raids and capital gains tax. And, speculation about inheritance tax. But we just haven't got to fags, beer, and petrol yet, which is the bit that most people are interested in. Yeah. As I say, he's not getting it easy, and this next 10, 12 days could well determine the future of Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. And as I said, it's been speculated that his deputy leader, Angela Rayner, is actually leading the cabinet revolt against him and Reeves on proposed cuts. No. He's just had his first cabinet resignation. One of his housing ministers are quit. Or a meeting that takes place between government and private sector, which included Saint-Gobain, which is a huge company. And one of the companies that was involved in the Grenfell Tower fire, well, Saint-Gobain's its parent company. So one of the housing ministers are quit for this meeting between government and this particular company. They say it's not gone well. Poor Kid Starmer and Granny Freezer, he's getting it tight as well for the devolved administrations, because from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, he's getting it in the ear. They're demanding more, and they're demanding that he sticks to his word on the end of austerity. That's not how it's looking, folks. Austerity is when you take extra money and use it to pay off the debt rather than spending on everyday needs. That's austerity. And it sounds like that's the plan. The plan is tax and cut, apparently. That's the very definition of austerity. But as I say, it's speculation at this point in time, but it's definitely no doing Starmer's popularity any good. 2 weekends in a row, the polls show him bombing. Absolutely bombing. And this budget in 9 days' time could determine him and Rachel Reeves' future. Whether he stays in number 10 or whether he doesn't. Larry, I'm sorry, you could be getting a new tenant shortly, and it might be that headbanger Angela Rayner. Rave time coming at your house, Larry. So, they say, it's not going any better for Starmer and Rachel Reeves. That is pure comedy gold. There will be a big swing back to the SNP, I can assure you, because by then they'll all be going after Chump. And it is comedy gold, Lauren. Absolutely comedy gold. So it is. So, what are we? July was it June or July? July there was the election. And here we are. We could be getting to November. Looking for a new Prime Minister. Could Keir Starmer be joining Liz Truss on the shortest PM list, or shortest tenure as PM list? Wow. And as if that's not enough chaos down that road, the two remaining contenders to take over which fag ends left of the Conservative Party are squabbling with each other. Our campaign tactics. Jenrick's accused bad enough of being disrespectful to the Conservative Party members because she hasn't set out what her policy programme would be going forward. Whereas Jenrick, he's pinned his tail to the donkey on immigration and on leaving the European Convention on Human Rights and opting out the European Court on Human Rights. Now, what was Kimmy Badenoch's team's reply to Jenrick's criticism of Miss Badenoch? Well, apparently, Miss Badenoch's team told Mr. Jenrick's team to piss off, set out his campaign how he likes, and Miss Badenoch will set out her campaign how she likes. Now, how's this going to go? One right-wing nutter, another right-wing nutter? Not quite sure. Jenrick wins. As I said, the next election will be campaigned on whether we leave the European Convention on Human Rights and opt out of the European Court on Human Rights. And if Badenoch wins, she's not telling us what she's going to do. It's interesting. Could it make a difference? Aye, because Starmer and his mob are doing that poorly that the Tories are now only 1% behind them in the polls. Wow. Thanks very much, mate. You were worried about the old Tories, so now you're terrified about the neo-Tories. As a person with disabilities, with kids, with autism, we need independence now. You're absolutely right, Mr. E. Especially when they've been whacking the disabled. I've been talking about it for years. As I say, 2 weeks ago, I would have said that who won that? 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, they say who won that bloody carry on to see who would be the next leader, the fag end of the Tory party. I would have said it was irrelevant. But because of how badly Starmer and Reeves is doing, all of a sudden it's become relevant again. All of a sudden it's become relevant again. But what we do know is England's already on the march to the right. Starmer and the Labour Party fail and the government collapses and there's an election. No matter who's winning, it's going further to the right. But, I mean, if we look at both of them, both the contenders, I mean, Jenrick, this is a guy who helped a Tory donor save 40 million quid for fast-tracking planning for a development in London called the West Ferry Printworks development. It was later recalled, the decision, and overturned. The development didn't go ahead, I believe. But, I mean, that's how dishonest this man is. Do we want the guy as the head of state? Sorry, as the Prime Minister, the head of states. Well, in Australia, they're now being head of state to that state. Anyway, do we want somebody like that at the helm? I don't know. The field's pretty poor, eh? Look at the front line of the Labour Party, look at the front line of the Tory Party, and all you see is a dearth of talent. An absolute dearth of talent. The Chancellor's an economic idiot, illiterate. Starmer hasn't got a fucking Scooby what he's doing. Angela Rayner, don't think she's quite grown up. David Lammy, couple £100 here and there for and you'll do whatever you want. No. Look at the front bench, the Tory party. Oofed. If that's the product of private education, shut the fucking system down the now. I can't believe that parents actually paid huge amounts of money to turn out that level of idiot. You know, imagine paying 50 odd grand a year to have that as the product at the end here. It's a fucking advert. The Tory front bench is an advert for shutting down the private education system. No doubt about it. Well, you know. So, all of a sudden, who wins the Tory party leadership has become relevant again because of how badly the Labour Party have done so far in government. Right. Now, apparently, this one's a cracker. Patients in England to get an app that will enable them to check their medical records and will change the way they interact with the NHS, apparently. And the way this has been sold to people is this app will change the way they interact with the NHS, the way the apps have changed the way that people interact with banks. How you interact with banks and how you interact with a medical service. There's apples and fucking pears for you right there. You can't compare. So what is this all about? People of England, because you better get your ears pricked up. I'm about to give you a warning. Last year, as we know, a company called Palantir was given a contract to pull together all the medical records of all the patients of England, and probably Wales as well, and put them all into one folder on a database. Okay, so what they're doing is, you've got to remember, when you go for separate services in the NHS, of which there are many, there are dental, ear, nose and throat, there is maternal, physiotherapy, all the different disciplines, all these services. Right, but some of them are at a local level. So Palantir is going to gather all this information on all the services that you've used and your whole medical record and put it into a folder where you can access it. It sounds like a bad idea, actually. Especially if each of the medical professionals can access it as well. But there is some warnings here. Like Med Confidential, they're worried about it being vulnerable and the information being misused, and about patient privacy and confidentiality. And they're absolutely correct, because there is a reason that this is happening, folks. And this is the warning that I'm giving the people of England. This is the sort of information in each folder for each person in England and probably Wales that you're going to need for the private healthcare service that you're going to have, because both Labour and Tory down that road are hell-bent in privatising the health service. So when you want to buy an insurance premium, that insurance company will have your medical records, because they'll have bought it for the government or from Palantir, and they will base the standard of premium or policy and the price of your policy based on that information. So the real reason why all this information is being compiled into one place is not to make the service more user-friendly, not to make it better for the user. This information is being compiled to be sold to insurance companies so that when you have to take out that private medical insurance, they can assess how much it's going to cost you and what level and what risk they're willing to take to cover you. So you have been warned. Now, this is a 10-year project. Sounds about right. It's a lot of data to compile. But that's what this is about, because privatising the NHS won't be done overnight. In England, it's been going now since 2012, slowly but surely. In fact, before that, Tony Blair. So this is the end game, folks. The end game is to get all your data into a nice envelope, so that when you need to buy an insurance policy, that insurance company will know of all the services, medical services you've used, how likely you are to use them again, and therefore how to charge you for that cover. That's what this is all about. So you have been warned, folks. It will happen here. We already have an interactive data system, but it's on an NHS mainframe. But I say it will happen here as well, because when they go down that road, we will be forced to follow. We warned you about this in 2014, and we we've dealt with scaremongering. But we also told you about Boris Johnson and Brexit. This one just takes a wee bit longer for them to achieve, which means we've still got time to get out before it's done to us. But England and Wales, I'm sorry, but that's what this is all about. That app that they're talking about giving you, that app's no for you. Yep, you might be able to have a look at all the services you've used as well, what tests you've had and all that sort of thing, but it's no for you. It's for the private medical insurance that you're going to need, or your family's going to need in the future. And when we talk about the future, they're even giving you a timetable. 10 years. 10 years. So there you go, folks. I hope that clears up what that was all about. The idea that England's getting an app to make using the NHS a bit like using your bank. Well, how fucking stupid do they think the people are? Do you think that using an NHS app would be like checking your bank statement and transferring funds? Fuck. Is that how stupid they think the people have become? Have the people become that fucking stupid? That's the question. Now let's move on. Let's have a look at what's going on in Ukraine. Well, the main story is about the relationship between Russia and North Korea. Now, folks, before I get into it, this is a non-story, okay? But if you look at the mainstream media today, North Korea getting involved in the conflict with Ukraine. 3,000 North Korean troops gone to Russia. Probably because of what's seen. Putin, China, North Korea, the BRICS, they're all solidifying around each other, and Putin's been spending a fair time in Korea. They're also military allies, the same way we've got NATO allies. And the interesting thing is that these 3,000 North Koreans, they're not going to Russia to fight in the Ukraine conflict. Although there will be some of them who will be observers. There always is. Right now, there'll be UK observers, UK troops, military observers with feet in the ground in Israel and in the Middle East. But this is a scare story. It is not unusual for troops to be out in secondment with military allies to learn their methods, to learn their techniques, also to learn how not to get in each other's fucking road when you're operating in theatre as a bloc, like NATO. Okay, so 3,000 gone to a place the size of Russia to learn for the Russians who are now selling the North Koreans weapons, and the North Koreans are now selling them weapons. No, folks, they're not there to put boots on the ground to fight the Ukrainians. Their own military secondment. And I had a wee look this morning to see how many UK military personnel were out in secondment across the NATO bloc at the moment, including places like America, but the bulk of them are. At this point in time, there is 3,176 UK military personnel out in secondment to NATO countries, the majority of which, 2,000 odds, are in the USA. So this is a scare story. But I thought I'd explain why it's a scare story. It's a scare story because these sort of numbers firing about within different allies and militaries, it's no unusual, and it's done for good purpose. If we take NATO, for example, if we're going to have to take a stance and enter a theatre as a bloc, I want to know that we understand each other, we're not going to eat each other's road, and we're not going to kill each other. Well, as I say, that's basically what's happening with North Korea, Russia, China, and anybody else in the BRICS that's going to join a military alliance. That is how it will go. Okay, so that story is just it's rubbish. Now, apparently, the US are also sanctioning a Chinese company who are supplying drones to Russia for the Ukraine conflict. I don't suppose a Chinese company will care. It's no supplying America, it'll not hit them. It's supplying Russia. That's what its sales are. So it'll continue making drones and it'll continue selling them to Russia. Okay, and apparently the Ukrainian troops are really done in now, folks. Aye, please, Madam Director, this one's one called. And it's still a stalemate for the time being, but it seems to be suiting Putin. We know that he could overrun the Ukraine quite quickly if he put his mind to it, but he's not put his mind to it. Seems to be something political going on at the side for him. It really does. But who understands the madman? Right, now, quick nip across to a quick look at America. And polls are still tight, folks. We're rapidly approaching November. The Harris side is out in front, but only just. That one's still on a knife edge. Out of the conflict in the Middle East, big story this week is the attack on Netanyahu's house. And then we've got Israel flattening Beirut, as was promised by Netanyahu, who says he'll slaughter the Lebanese people until they turn in their regime and turn on Hezbollah. And remember, Hezbollah is part of the government over there in Lebanon. So he's fulfilling his promise that he would turn southern Lebanon into another Gaza Strip. We also have the Americans who are investigating leaked information of an Israeli strike coming up against Iran. And apparently there's also satellite intelligence that says that they are moving military assets closer to Iran for a strike. Now, obviously, this would concern the Americans because a massive strike on Iran could see this escalate into a regional and then a world war. Because Russia would put, the Americans are going to put boots on the ground apparently in Israel. And at that point, if the conflict escalates, then you can see the Russians coming to their friend Iran's aid. We might even see the Turks get on the side of the Iranians. This could escalate out of control, folks. It could. Where are the bloody diplomats when you need them? Have they all gone to sleep? Have they gorged themselves on honey-flavoured tug cakes and went to sleep? Netanyahu needs stoked. And I'm not surprised that they were taking strikes and pot shots at his house. Better question is, how did Hezbollah manage to hit his house? Didn't do much damage. He was home. I'm sure it made a loud enough bang, but apparently his house is well fortified. But it appears they know where he's moving, when he's moving, and what he's doing. That's good information, good intel. But should Netanyahu be surprised that his enemies are having a go at him? No, because he keeps knocking their leaders out. No. But we need the diplomatic services of each of the nations to step up to the plate. And the most sickening thing in the last couple of weeks, which hasn't done Starmer any favours either, was his latest Israel has the right to self-determination. We stand four blocks square behind Israel. He fucking might, but the majority is won't. The majority of us, the people, are appalled at what's going on. Here's a wee thought for you, people of England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. If they're willing to watch the Palestinian people be slaughtered like that and no say nothing, that's the sort of people who would turn their own forces on you, the constituent parts of this state. Right, that's what I've got for these guys. As I say, it wasn't written for a one-person show. That's why I've been ad-libbing most of it, to be honest. I mean, it is the subjects that we were destined to talk about today. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it informative. Listen, thanks very much to the admin or moderators or whatever we call them in this particular platform for moderating today. I want to thank everybody who made a contribution to the food bank cause today. It's getting near that time when we'll get the money in. It was in between now, the 21st and the 26th, as you know, I'll have it out the door as soon as we get it in. Okay. Hopefully on Thursday, David will be feeling up to joining us. Did say there'd be times like this during his recovery, and I will soldier on my own until he's ready to take up the reins again, which hopefully will be this Thursday. All right, folks. Now look after yourself. I've got to go and schedule tomorrow's broadcast and Thursday's broadcast. Look after yourselves. Look after each other. Bye for now.